Well, Honorable Mark Bila is still with us in the studio, and just before we went on break, he was saying that what the National Assembly did was reorder, not touch the date. I mean, we're talking about the sequence, not the date. But some people will say, why did you even have to touch the sequence at all? What was wrong with the last sequence?
Okay, ours is a fledgling democracy. And Nigerians should be happy that we're a responsible and patriotic National Assembly that is trying to protect the interests of the people. Forget the fact that a few individuals have, raised hue and cry over this issue. I can assure you majority of Nigerians, as postulated even by representatives of some political parties on your show here yesterday, are in complete support of the change in sequence, because we need to avoid a case where the voters of this country are disenfranchised because there's no grassroots up approach in our elections. And remember that even our progenitors, in their fashioning of our constitution, you will see that the legislature even comes first, if that is anything to even go by. So we believe that to avoid, like you've heard, like a broken record, the issue of the bandwagon effect, Nigerians need to be able to vote objectively for who are the true representatives of the people first.
Honourable Member.
Before we go up to the critical issue of the presidential election.
In fairness to the content of the Nigerian Constitution, you mentioned one section which talks about dates, in fairness. Now, but you neglected to mention the other section in the third schedule, subsection 15, proviso A, that says organize, undertake, and supervise. Now, organize is a pretty broad term. We all agree on that. And people are essentially, depending on what perspective you're coming from, you shape it around that perspective. But the term organize is not just setting a date. The term organize is quite a broad term. So some people, when they say that this electoral act is impinging upon the boundaries of the Constitution, set by the Constitution, that's probably what they're citing. What do you have to say about that?
Now, we should not look at certain issues in isolation. The Constitution is the supreme law of this land, and it makes it categorically clear in the relevant sections what INEC is supposed to do with regards to elections is setting dates. In terms of interpretation, it's subject to interpretation. And remember, the only arm of government given the power to make laws is the National Assembly. And that is enshrined in the Constitution. So when the National Assembly makes an electoral act, it supersedes any contrary interpretation of a word except very clearly made by a statement of court with regards to what that is.
So since your focus is on the grassroots, I'm wondering, why not the National Assembly and, say, the State House of Assembly on the same day, for instance? Why the National Assembly elections first, then the next weekend you get, or the next time you get the governorship and State House of Assembly, since they are more grassroots than the National Assembly is even?
Well, in your own impression, perhaps, you think they're more grassroots, but it all boils down to constituencies of our people. And with regards to the National Assembly, the issue generally is to provide people with the ability to vote on a national spread for that institution that is actually the fulcrum and the bastion of a democracy in a country.
Not at their level. So, for instance, you talk about, well, I don't know if
so
this is what you're
that
talking
is
about.
why you see constitutionally,
yes,
that is why the National Assembly in a lot of areas supersedes the decisions made at the House of Assembly constitutionally. So in that thinking, I'm not holding brief for the National Assembly. I'm telling you my personal interpretation. It is generally the understanding that at the national level, the National Assembly is what holds this nation together democratically. So it is not out of place to start from there.
Honourable Member,
institution.
Honourable Member, just yesterday we saw Vice President Yemi Osinbajo express the opinion, apparently the change in opinion of the executive, that indeed we are now ripe for the creation of state police. When you look at the recent history of our democratic experiment, you see some of the influence the Nigerian police force has had in certain electoral exercises. What are your thoughts on the potential of this creation of state police in view of electoral dynamics in the country?
Now, that has been the concern of a lot of us, the fact that we do not want a situation where the state police becomes a tool in the hand of a dubious state executive. But that shouldn't stop us from doing what is right, what is an expression of true federalism. And that is why it behoves on the electorate, once again, to ensure that they vote somebody with the pedigree and the antecedents to be upright and to uphold the rule of law. Because our Constitution, as it subsists, in my own impression, contradicts itself in Section 215 when it says in subsection 4, it gives a governor, or as he instructs any of his commissioners, the right to instruct a state commissioner of police with regards to security issues in the state, and then says, but this is subject, I'm paraphrasing here, to the commissioner's ability to refer this matter still to the president. So at the end of the day, a state governor is helpless, which is playing itself out in my state, Benue. And like you were witnesses on this show.
Just a moment. I don't want to delve into that now, but I'm sure that our guests in Lagos will definitely have a perspective on state policing. Chamberlain.
Well, yes, indeed. And before that, I'd just like to read out this. The EFCC responded to some of this conversation. They say that as long as a financial crime is involved in the offense, money laundering or bribery, it is in the purview of the EFCC, and it is empowered to prosecute such offenses. So Honorable Bila was talking about they're not exactly sure how or what role the EFCC will be playing with respect to electoral offenses or buying of votes. But let's get your response now on what they also spoke about, which is the reordering the sequence of the elections. Well, as much as it's almost over and done with at the National Assembly, it will then go to the executive. What school of thought do you subscribe to as to whether or not they should have altered the sequence or leave it as it is?
Well, I am all for the reordering of the sequence.
Why?
Because you see, the Constitution, which, like the gentleman over there said, is supreme. It's the concept or ego of the Nigerian legal system. So we have to abide by it. Now, Section 132, for example, for the president, subsection 1, is saying that, well, maybe I should read it for you. It's saying that the appointment of any date, the president shall be, an election to the office of president shall be held on the date to be appointed by the Independent National Electoral Commission. Now, that left INEC with both the appointment, the sequence, and everything. But they knew that the Constitution, those people who, the draftsmen of the Constitution or the House of the National Assembly, saw that thing was wrong. It shouldn't be like that.
For INEC to fix the date? For
INEC to fix, not to fix the date, but to talk about the sequence of the election. Because they now had a carte blanche to fix the date and also to order the sequence of the election. But after realizing that one, this constitution was amended in 2010. And this amendment takes pride of place. The Latin maxim, leges posteriores, priores contrarias abrogant. Later laws abrogate prior laws that are contrary to them, is still valid.